Story 1. I still remember the last time I laughed without feeling cold inside. It was with Charles, my best friend since high school. We were the kind of idiots who thought danger was just another word for adventure. But that night on the fire tower, it taught me that some places don't want to be found. And once they have you, they don't want to let you go. My name is James. This happened 7 or 8 years ago, back when I was in my early 20s. Still chasing that rush of doing things I knew I probably shouldn't. Charles was the one who always found the spots. Abandoned factories, old hospitals, places Google Earth forgot. He lived for it. And I usually went along. One weekend he texted me about an old decommissioned fire lookout tower deep in the forest. He said it had been abandoned for decades, sitting there completely untouched. 70 feet tall with a small cab on top and a 360-degree view. The idea sounded insane, but also incredible. I told him I'd go. We drove 3 hours, then hiked 4 miles off. Trail. The forest grew thicker, darker, the trees taller. When we finally saw the tower rising through the canopy, I whispered, "No way," under my breath. It was massive. Metal frame covered in rust, some railings bent or missing graffiti near the base. It looked like it could collapse any second. Charles was grinning like a kid on Christmas. He started climbing immediately. I hesitated, staring up at the zigzagging stairs, but eventually followed. Each step creaked. Some wobbled under my weight. The vertical ladder near the top was the worst, 20 feet straight up with only a thin metal cage around it. My hands were sweating. My heart hammered against my ribs. We made it to the top. The view, God. The view was unreal. You could see for miles endless green ocean of trees stretching to the horizon. We sat on the wraparound walkway, cracked open some beers, and watched the sun bleed out across the sky. Orange, purple, then deep blue. The stars came out brighter than I had ever seen them. But as the forest below turned completely black, that beautiful feeling slowly changed into something else. Unease. It was just too dark down there. You knew the forest was there, but you couldn't see anything. It felt like we were floating in space, detached from the world. Charles noticed I was getting tense. He started messing with me, grabbing my shoulder, making sudden noises. Then he did something stupid. He smacked his metal water bottle hard against the tower frame. The sound rang out, loud, metallic, echoing for miles into the night. I got angry. "What the hell, man?" I snapped. The sound felt wrong, like we had just announced ourselves to something that shouldn't know we were here. We moved inside the small cab. It was empty, hollowed out long ago, just bare walls and windows on all 4 sides. I started setting up my sleeping bag in one corner. Charles said he wanted to finish his beer outside first. A few minutes later, his voice came through the door. Quiet, serious, not like him at all. "James, come look at this." I stepped back onto the walkway. He was pointing down into the darkness, diagonally toward the forest floor. At first, I saw nothing. Then, I saw it. A light, faint, yellowish, moving slowly through the trees far below. It wasn't swinging like a flashlight. It moved too smoothly, too evenly, like it was floating. My stomach tightened. I whispered, even though there was no reason to. "That's probably just some hiker who heard your stupid bottle." Charles shook his head slowly. "You think that's a person?" We watched in silence. The light kept moving, perfectly steady, weaving between the trees, getting closer. Every few minutes it would suddenly zip forward, then return to that same calm floating pace. Like it was playing with us. I felt my palms start to sweat. The air up there suddenly felt colder. After about 10 minutes, the light reached the base of the tower and stopped directly below us. It just stayed there. Perfectly still, we couldn't see who or what was holding it. Only the light. Charles, being Charles, yelled down, "Hey, you good down there?" No answer. He yelled again. Still nothing. We were trapped, 70 feet up, with the only way down blocked by something that didn't want to show itself. We sat there watching that light for over 30 minutes. Barely speaking, just whispering theories that got more and more ridiculous. At one point, I aimed my flashlight straight down. The beam cut through the darkness, but it revealed nothing. The light was still there, but no figure, no person, nothing. Eventually, the light just vanished. 1 second, it was there. The next, complete darkness again. Charles seemed relieved. I wasn't. The absence of the light felt worse. Now whatever it was down there, invisible. We decided to go inside the cab, backs against the door, facing the windows. Neither of us planned to sleep. That would have been suicide. About 20 minutes later, the sound started. First came a loud metallic clang, echoing up through the steel frame of the tower. Not footsteps, something harder, like metal striking metal. Then a grinding sound, slow, tortured, like someone was twisting the support beams with bare hands. The noises moved around, sometimes below us, sometimes on different sides. They never got closer in a straight way, but they felt deliberate, like whatever was making them knew we were listening. I kept staring out the windows. The moon was faint, the forest below an ocean of black. Then I saw it. A dark outline, moving across one of the glass panes, tall, thin, not quite human. It passed one window. Then the next, I yelled. Charles scrambled away. We both slammed our backs against the door, pressing hard, ready to fight if it tried to come in. Hours passed like that, the longest hours of my life. We barely breathed. Every small creak of the tower made us flinch. I kept thinking about the light, the sounds that shape at the window. My mind kept spiraling, wondering if this tower had claimed other people before us. When the first gray light of dawn finally appeared, we were exhausted. I counted to 3, threw the door open, expecting something to be right there. Nothing. We looked around the cab. Clear. We looked down at the base. Nothing. We started descending as fast as we could. The stairs groaned under our weight. We made it about 3/4 of the way down when Charles suddenly stopped on a landing. He was staring downward. I looked past him, and my blood turned to ice. An entire section of the staircase was gone, not broken, not collapsed, completely removed. A clean gap, too wide to simply step across. It was impossible. We had climbed up those stairs the day before. We had been sitting directly above this spot all night. The sounds we heard, those grinding noises, they must have been this. But how? How could something dismantle heavy metal stairs in complete silence? While we were right there. We had no choice. We had to jump the gap. Charles went first, landed awkwardly, twisted his ankle. I made it across. We limped the rest of the way down, hearts pounding, constantly looking over our shoulders. There was nothing at the bottom. No tools, no removed stairs lying on the ground. Just empty forest. We hiked out in silence. Charles tried to joke about it later, but his laugh was hollow. We both knew something had been playing with us that night. Something that could float, something that could climb, something that could take apart steel in the dark without making a sound. I still see Charles sometimes. Every time we meet, we end up talking about that tower. He still explores abandoned places. I don't. Because I know now some places aren't abandoned. They're waiting. And sometimes late at night, when I'm lying in bed, I hear it. A faint metallic clang, echoing from somewhere far away. And I wonder if that light is still out there, floating slowly through the forest, looking for the next person stupid enough to climb something they shouldn't, looking for me again. Story 2. I never wanted to tell this story, but some things refuse to stay buried. They come back at night, when the house is quiet, and the only sound is your own breathing. My name is James. This happened when I was 26. Back when I still thought I was invincible. Back when solo backpacking deep into the mountains felt like freedom instead of a death wish. I had been hiking for 2 days already in the Cherokee National Forest. Completely off the grid. No cell signal, no other hikers, just me, the trees. And that deep silence that makes you feel like the forest is holding its breath. The first 2 days were perfect, golden light, crisp air, the kind of peace that makes you forget the real world even exists. Then the sky turned against me. It started in the afternoon, dark clouds gathering low and heavy to the west. At first I wasn't worried. I had hiked in rain before, but the wind came faster than I expected, cold biting. It cut right through my jacket. I stopped, pulled on an extra layer, and kept moving. Within an hour the rain hit, not gentle drops, but a sudden violent downpour that turned the trail into rushing mud. Lightning flashed dangerously close, cracking like gunshots above the canopy. I was on an exposed ridge with a metal-framed pack on my back. Every flash made my skin crawl. I started scanning the woods desperately, looking for any kind of shelter. That's when I saw it. Half hidden through the trees on my left, a small, dark one-story cabin. Relief flooded through me so strongly. My legs almost gave out. I pushed through the wet brush, rain hammering my face, and practically ran toward it. The door opened with a loud creak, swinging inward easily. Inside, it was dry. The relief was overwhelming. The air smelled old, musty, with a faint sour undertone I couldn't quite place. There was a wooden chair, a small table, a cot frame against the far wall, and a stone fireplace full of ancient ash. I stripped off my soaked clothes immediately, wrung them out, and laid them across the chair. Then I sat down hard on the wooden floor, back against the wall, breathing heavily. For the first 10 or 15 minutes, I just sat there, grateful alive. The storm raged outside like it wanted to tear the world apart. But I was safe, or so I thought. Eventually, I turned on my flashlight and started looking around more carefully. That's when the first cracks appeared in my sense of safety. There was a sleeping bag rolled up neatly in the corner, modern fabric, but covered in dust. On the table sat 2 cans of food and a half, full water jug. Someone had been here. Not decades ago, but recently enough. I told myself it was nothing, just another hiker leaving supplies. But then I noticed the walls near the door, scratches, dozens of them. Some shallow, some deep gouges in the wood. No pattern, just raw, desperate marks. Like someone had clawed at the wall for hours, maybe days. My heart started beating faster. I walked to the door, opened it again despite the pouring rain, and checked the outside frame. There was a metal bracket, perfectly placed for a padlock, but no way to lock it from the inside. Only from the outside, I closed the door slowly, the latch clicking loudly in the small room. Then I moved to the single window. The glass was perfectly intact, which was strange for such an old cabin, but I quickly understood why. Heavy screws had been driven into each corner of the frame. From the outside, and around the inside edges, more deep scratches, the kind made by bare fingers trying desperately to pry the window open. Everything hit me at once. This cabin had been used to trap someone, to keep them against their will. I stood frozen in the center of the room, flashlight beam trembling slightly. I should have left right then. Storm or no storm, every instinct screamed at me to run. But the rain was hammering the roof like machine gun fire. Trees were cracking and falling outside. Lightning lit up the forest in violent flashes. Going back out there felt like certain death. So I stayed. I sat back down, rifle across my lap, telling myself whatever happened here was long in the past. The sleeping bag was dusty. The scratches looked old. I was just being paranoid. Time passed. Slowly. The storm only grew worse. The rain on the metal roof was so loud it drowned out almost everything. I tried to breathe steadily, but my mind kept racing. Then I heard it. A slow, deliberate scraping sound, moving along the left exterior wall. Not a branch swaying in the wind. The rhythm was too careful, too intentional. It moved from the back of the cabin toward the front, then stopped. I stood up, heart pounding. 2 heavy thumps landed on the wooden porch. I froze, staring at the door. I did that thing where your whole body locks up, eyes fixed on one spot on the wall, trying to hear over the roar of the storm. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. I started to relax, just a little, telling myself it was the wind or an animal. I was almost ready to sit down again when it happened. Heavy pressure leaned against the door from the outside. The old wood creaked loudly under the weight. The latch rattled once sharply. Then the pressure slowly released. It didn't try the handle. It just leaned there, like it knew I was inside, like it wanted me to feel its presence. That was the moment true terror sank its claws into me. The door wasn't locked. Nothing stopped it from simply walking in, yet it chose to circle the cabin, to scratch the walls, to lean against the door without entering. It didn't want to come in. It wanted me to stay inside. I started throwing my wet clothes and gear into my pack with shaking hands. I didn't care about the storm anymore. I had to get out right now. I was maybe 30 seconds from reaching for the door when the window behind me exploded in a shower of glass. A flaming bottle smashed onto the floor. The fire spread with impossible speed. The walls seemed to drink the flames. Heat slammed into me like a physical wall. Smoke filled my lungs instantly. I ran for the door and slammed my shoulder into it with everything I had. It wouldn't budge. It had been jammed from the outside. I hit it again, and again, screaming as my skin began to blister. Finally, the hinges gave way with a horrible metallic scream. I tumbled out into the freezing rain, rolling down the porch as the entire cabin erupted into a roaring inferno behind me. I ran blindly through the storm, branches tearing at my face, mud sucking at my boots. The flames lit up the forest in flickering orange hell. Light. I looked back once, and saw a tall, unnaturally still silhouette standing near the burning cabin, watching me. Then something massive tackled me from behind. We crashed to the wet ground. The fight was savage, desperate, claws raking my skin, fingers gouging at my eyes, a raw inhuman scream mixing with my own. I somehow broke free and kept running. The burns on my arm and neck burned like liquid fire with every step. I ran until my legs completely gave out. I crawled beneath 2 large fallen trees into a narrow dark gap that barely blocked the rain and collapsed there, shaking numb. The pain, the cold, the terror. All of it blended together until I couldn't feel my own body anymore. I stayed under those trees for hours, drifting in and out of consciousness, convinced that whatever had chased me was still out there, patiently waiting in the dark. When I finally forced myself to move again, I stumbled through the woods like a broken man. Eventually, I found a trail. A stranger drove me to the hospital. Second-degree burns, smoke inhalation. The doctors called me lucky, but I wasn't lucky because that thing didn't want me dead that night. It wanted me to remember. And sometimes, even now, years later, I wake up in the middle of the night, and I can still hear it. The slow scraping along the wall beside my bed and the heavy pressure, leaning against my bedroom door from the outside. Story 3. I thought the forest was finished with me after the cabin, and after the tower. I really believed that if I just stopped going too deep, stopped tempting fate, it would finally leave me alone. But the woods have a long memory, and whatever lives inside them is very patient. My name is James. This happened about 2 years ago in the Daniel Boone National Forest in eastern Kentucky. Over 700,000 acres of old, dense wilderness. The kind of place where you can walk for days and never see another soul. I was in my late 30s by then, carrying more scars than I like to admit. But I still needed the silence. Work had been crushing me. My mind was loud. I told myself one more solo trip would fix everything. I was wrong. I drove out on a Thursday morning, parked at a remote trailhead, and started hiking with my 308 bolt action rifle slung across my chest. 3 nights in the backcountry. That was the plan. My pack was heavy but familiar. Tent, food, water, rifle. The first day felt like old times, 7 miles deep. The air smelled of pine and damp soil. Birds called overhead. I found a beautiful flat spot beside a quiet creek bed as the sun began to set. I set up my tent, gathered wood, and built a good fire. The flames crackled softly while I cooked dinner and drank a warm beer. The stars came out thick and bright. For the first time in months, I felt calm. I let the fire burn down to glowing embers, crawled into my tent, and fell asleep around 10 o'clock. Then, sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. Not from a sound. Just that sudden, electric awareness. The way your body knows something is wrong before your mind catches up. I lay completely still inside my sleeping bag, staring at the dark roof of the tent. My breathing felt too loud. That's when I noticed the glow. A faint, orange light, pulsing gently through the thin walls of my tent. It wasn't moonlight, it was warmer, flickering. I slowly unzipped the flap just a few inches, and looked out. About 200 yards away, through the trees, a campfire was burning. Not a forest fire, a proper campfire contained. Steady, the flames moved like they were alive. Breathing, I watched it for a long time, waiting to hear voices. Laughter, anything human. There was nothing. Only the fire. Dancing alone in the darkness, my heart started beating harder. I told myself it was another camper. Someone who had arrived after dark. Maybe they went to sleep and left the fire going. It was irresponsible, but not impossible. I watched it for another 5, maybe 10 minutes. The flames never grew out of control. They just stayed there. I zipped the tent shut, lay back down, and tried to sleep. But the orange glow stayed behind my eyelids, pulsing slowly, like a heartbeat. The next morning, the first thing I thought about was that fire. I packed camp quickly, then hiked straight toward where I had seen it. The forest was quiet. Dew still clung to the leaves. After about 10 minutes, I reached a natural clearing that matched the angle perfectly. There was nothing. No fire pit. No ring of stones. No ash, no scorched earth. The grass stood tall and untouched, sparkling with morning light. The ground looked completely pristine, like no one had stepped there in years. I walked the entire clearing, touching the grass, searching for any sign. Nothing. Not a single broken twig. My mouth went dry. I knew I had seen that fire. I had watched it for minutes. Yet the forest looked like it had never been disturbed. That was the first time the old fear came crawling back. The same feeling I had in the cabin, and on the tower, the feeling that I was being watched, not by a person, but by the forest itself. I tried to shake it off. I still had 2 more nights. I wasn't going to let paranoia ruin my trip, so I kept hiking, going deeper. By late afternoon, the terrain changed. The trees grew older, taller, their trunks thick and silent. The canopy became so dense it blocked most of the sky. The air felt heavier, quieter. I found a good campsite in a small hollow and set up early. I built another fire, but this time I kept it smaller. I ate quickly, then let the flames die down before 9. I crawled into the tent, exhausted, hoping for deep sleep. It didn't come. Sometime after midnight, a sound ripped me awake. A massive, violent cracking, like a thick tree trunk being torn apart. It went on for 4 or 5 terrifying seconds, ending in a deep ground shaking thud. I could feel through my sleeping pad. The whole forest seemed to tremble. I sat up fast, breathing hard. No wind, no storm, just that one enormous sound. 10 minutes later, it happened again, this time much closer, northwest. The same grotesque cracking, followed by crashing branches, and another heavy thud, 2 different directions, 2 different trees. On a perfectly calm night, my hands started shaking. I stayed awake, listening. My mind raced through every possible explanation, but none made sense. Then the new sound began, a low, continuous rumbling, deep in the throat of the forest. Not a growl, exactly, more like something enormous clearing its throat, and then forgetting to stop. It went on for nearly a full minute, steady, purposeful, like it wanted me to hear it. I grabbed my rifle, chambered around as quietly as I could, and pointed it at the tent door. I sat like that for over 20 minutes, sweat running down my back, heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. The sound finally faded, moving away slowly, like whatever made it was walking off into the darkness. I didn't sleep again that night. At first light, I packed up fast, hands still trembling. I decided to check the second tree, the closer one. I needed to see it. Needed proof I wasn't losing my mind. I found it after 15 minutes. It was massive. The trunk lay at an angle across a slope. Broken branches scattered everywhere. The stump was about 3 feet high, but the break, eek. It wasn't natural. The wood looked torn, gouged, chewed. Long, irregular grooves ran deep into the fresh, pale wood. Some over an inch deep. Bark had been peeled away in long, curling strips, like giant fingers had stripped it. This wasn't wind damage. This wasn't beaver. This was something aggressive. Something that enjoyed destroying. I felt sick. Then, as I turned to leave, something near the broken branches caught my eye. A small cluster of items on the ground. My blue bandana and one of my carabiners. Items I knew for certain had been inside my pack when I went to sleep. I tore open my backpack, hands frantic. They were missing. Someone, or something, had been inside my tent while I lay there awake. terrified. Listening to trees fall, it had taken my things and left them here, like a message. That was the breaking point. Pure animal panic flooded me. I ran. I ran hard through the dense forest, pack bouncing rifle in my hands. Every shadow looked like it was moving. Every snap of a twig made me whip around. I felt it behind me, around me, above me, watching, following, playing. The hike back to my car took the rest of the day. I didn't stop. My legs burned. My lungs burned. But the fear was stronger. I kept expecting something to drop from the branches or rise up from the undergrowth. I made it to the car around 3 in the afternoon, threw everything inside, and drove away so fast the tires screamed. When I was far enough away, I pulled over and called the police. They didn't believe me. I didn't expect them to. For days afterward, I couldn't sleep in the dark. I kept the lights on. I kept checking the windows because I knew the truth now. That ghost fire wasn't another camper. Those falling trees weren't natural. And the thing that took my bandana and carabiner, it wasn't trying to kill me that night. It was collecting me piece by piece, just like it had tried to keep me in the cabin, just like it had tried to trap me on the tower. It's still out there waiting, and sometimes when I'm lying in bed at night, I hear it. A low, continuous rumbling far away in the distance, and I smell smoke. Even though there's no fire, the forest isn't done with me. I think it never will be.